Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of our photography review show. I hope you all had a great week and I hope you're ready for more photography fun. Now, if you've never been here before, my name is Jakub and I'm a professional photographer based in West Sussex, England. I've been running this show for the last 2 years. I have reviewed thousands of images and I can't wait to see yours. So what do we do during this show? We review your photos and we look at specifically 3 parts of each of the images. We look at the technical part, and that's where we look at things like your camera settings, noise, exposure, sharpness, all of that good stuff that come with the technical part of capturing your photo. Once we're done with that, we move to the artistic part. This is where we look at your composition, framing, storytelling. We focus on the main subject and the overall artistic feel of the image. And finally, if we have an extra time or if I think that it's beneficial, we then try to give you some tips and tricks on how to edit the image or how to improve it during the photo editing process. So the photo editing is done in Luminar Neo because this channel is all about Luminar Neo and editing in it. However, if you do not own Luminar Neo, the editing I do can be definitely redone in any of the usual photo editing applications like Lightroom, Photoshop, On1, Affinity, and so on. It's really simple. So this is all out of the way. Now, if you would like to join us in the future or even next week, all you need to do is to join our membership. Our membership is called Clever Photographer Plus. We have a great community members in it already. And when you join us, what you do, you get a monthly bundles full of photography tools, including presets for Lightroom and Luminar, LUTs, textures, overlays, backgrounds, custom brushes, and all the good stuff you can imagine. Now, each month, that bundle is themed to specific kind of photography. Like this month, it's a wildlife photography, and usually it includes something around 250 or 300 assets. So when you join us, you will get this monthly bundle. After that, you will also get access to our Clever Photographer Academy Facebook group, and on the top of it, you will be able to submit your images to this personal, almost one-on-one photography reviews where you can send us 2 images a week, and I will share with you my feedback, tell you what I think, and hopefully help you to keep improving your photography skills. If you want to learn more about the photography show and about how to join the Clever Photographer Plus membership, all you need to do is to jump on our website, cleverphotographer.com/membership, sign up there, and already next week we will be reviewing your photos here. Now, if you're watching live, you will notice that this video is pre-recorded. And the reason is that at the time of the live broadcasting, I will be recording 2 classes for the Landscape Photography Summit. Now, this summit is a free event which you're more than welcome to join. I will be there together with other photographers teaching more about landscape photography. My classes will include the composition in landscape photography and also class about Luminar Neo, where I will try to show you why I think that Luminar Neo is one of the best options, and especially for beginner photographers when it comes to photo editing software. So if you want to join us for the Landscape Photography Summit, it will be on next week. If you can't make it on the day, you will get a recording. It's completely free. And to join it, all you need to do is to follow the link in the description of this video, or I will link it somewhere around the screen right now. But now let's jump to it and start reviewing your photos. So we have a few landscape photographers, and the first one we're gonna look at is David Francis. David, I have to say, when I saw your images first, I absolutely love them. They are amazing. I love the colors, I love the light, the composition. Well done. So let's have a look at them. Starting with this image right here, and we're gonna start by looking at the camera details. So this image was captured with the Nikon Z6 Mark II, probably. Nikon 24 to 70 millimeters was the lens, and from the camera settings, ISO 100, f7.1 and half a second on the shutter speed. So when it comes to camera settings, we keep on and on about it. Obviously with the ISO, as low as you can go, and 100 is perfectly fine, and that exact goal we are looking for. f7.1 as well, good choice, just to make sure that everything is nicely in focus. And half a second on the shutter speed just mean that most likely you have used a tripod to capture this image. So when it comes to camera settings, I think everything is good. Technically, with the wider lens around 37 millimeters, I think you could have gone with the f-stop little lower, maybe, I don't know, just a little lower. I think your lens goes as far as f4. You could try it, and by going with the f-stop lower, you then would be able to maybe do or capture the image a little faster. But actually, it doesn't make any difference. I think everything looks really good. I really like the level of the details. That's nicely captured. The light is very nice. There is no visible noise for me anyway. The sharpness is very good as well. So in overall, technically, I think it's nicely done. Nothing overexposed. Again, the light is very pleasing. So all in all, good for the technical part. When we're talking about the artistic part, I think it's very pretty. I love the contrast of the warm gold leaf together or in contrast with the tree, which has a darker colors, much more shadows, different texture and different color. So in overall, the combination of it, I think works really well. Looking at the image, you obviously have a clear focal point, which is the tree really standing out of the scene. Then everything is nicely put together. I don't see any issues with any of the framing. It has a depth as well. So all in all, really nicely done. And when it comes to post-processing, there is not much I would add to it neither. I think it's just very well done. I think it's all very well balanced. I love the colors, the saturation, the light, the level of shadows and highlights. So altogether, great picture, and there's not much I can add to it. So just few things there. Only thing, maybe try to play around with different shutter speed. Although for me also f7.1 is one of my favorite. But maybe if you would have gone a little lower, you would be able to bring the shutter speed a little bit faster. And when that would be handy, well, it would be handy if, for example, there was a little bit of wind. In that case, the leaves would move around and it could create like a motion blur. So in that case, you would be looking for a faster shutter speed. But this looks great. I love it a lot. Now, talking about the second image, obviously a similar feel. When we look at the details from the previous image, it was captured with the same camera, still the Nikon. Also the Nikon lens 24-70. And here for the camera settings, ISO 160, so still very much in that circle of safe numbers. Then f6.3 again is a good choice there, and 1/13 of a second, so probably different light situation here. Maybe first you went a little bit lower with the f-stop as well as a little bit faster with your shutter speed, and the result is still really nice. Now, when I look at the first things and look at the second image, when I look at the first image and second image, you can see how on the first image, what really worked very well was that the tree had almost like a different white balance compared to the rest of the image. And that created a really nice contrast, where on the second image, the tree and the brown has lots of warmth in it. So it blends a little bit together. So that's my only thing for this part, is there's just that there is a lots of yellow on it, lots of yellow. However, from the technical part, there is nothing wrong. Everything is done right. Looking at it, when we zoom in a little bit, again, looking at the overall sharpness, I think it's all good. If we wait a moment and it loads, again, the depth is good as well. The exposure is good as well. Maybe there are parts which are slightly brighter than they should be, maybe between the trees and a tree, but in overall, I think it's good. When it comes to the composition and the artistic parts, I really like the leading lines created with the leaves. I think that works really nicely. In opposite, the leading lines of the tree coming down are also really nice. So that's all nicely done together. Again, the focal point is very clear. Also, the darker areas at the bottom create really nice natural vignette, bringing the attention towards the main subject. So really, in overall, all I would say here is just the white balance for the trees. I think it's just lots of warm saturation or warm colors. So let's see if we can maybe adjust it a little bit. If we could do it locally, For example, we could go into the develop tool and then adjust the white balance, bring down the temperature just a little bit, maybe somewhere, let's have a look, around -10. And then maybe the tint, let's have a look. The tint we leave the way it is. After that, what we could do, we could go into the color tool where we can find the HSL panel. And in the HSL panel, we will move to saturation. And here we can adjust a little bit of warmth as well. When we have a look at the tree, we don't worry about anywhere else. We're focusing on a tree. And we can also adjust a little bit of the orange down a little bit, just somewhere around here. After that, what you would do, you would just pick a simple brush and basically start to paint over the areas which you don't want that yellow. So in our case, it's the tree. Now I'm not going to do a great job here because we don't have a time for that, but it will give you an idea on what we're trying to do. Just to create a little bit more contrast between the two parts and yeah, just to balance it out a little bit. So something like this. Let's have a look. Before and after, and I think it helps a little bit. It's not a major adjustment, but just to make it work together a little bit more. Still, both of them, lovely pictures, David. Love them, especially this one is really, really cool. I think it's well done. I love the colors, I love the light, the details, everything works there. So well done, congratulations. And if you have more pictures, make sure you send them to us for next week. Which brings us to another David, and this time it's David Peterson. David, 2 images from you, both of them from Seascape settings. So let's start with this one right here. Captured with Nikon D810 from the camera lens 24 to 120 and from the camera settings ISO 100, f11, 1/200 of a second. This is a great example of an image where setting-wise everything is spot on. Low ISO, good f-stop because the f11 is great for this distance to make sure that the sharpness is all the way through. 1/200 of a second also give us very decent exposure. However, if you could have a wish list for a great image, you would just wish that this capture and this scene was captured at different time of the day. When I look at it, the first thing that strikes me is that it's shot probably somewhere around midday. Maybe not necessarily midday, but around that area, and the light seems to be just a little bit harsh. I always like to explain it to my students or when I'm running a workshop is when you go out, when you're walking around and you have that feeling that you should be putting your sunglasses on. You know, sometimes you look around, even though you're not looking at the sun, you're looking around and your eyes hurt. The camera will capture exactly the same. And I'm sure this was absolutely beautiful day to walk around and everything. But for the camera, it's just a little bit visible. And you can really see it from some of the brighter areas and the darker areas. The contrast between them is huge. And another spot which usually show it is around the darker edges. So when you look at the building itself, you can see a tiny bright glow around it. You can see it around the building here, as well as around the lighthouse. And that's one of the signs when the light was just a bit too harsh. So then when you develop the image, you adjust all the stuff, whites, highlights, shadows, everything. Often you end up with a glow around it. And that's because the camera is capturing quite big dynamic range between the really, really dark shadows to really bright highlights. And it often creates white glow, especially around the areas where there is like a really dark edges. So that's why around the houses here. So that would be my comment for this. It's nothing to do with the technical part because that's well done. Nothing wrong with choosing the location because I really like that. I like the foreground. I like the middle ground, the main subject of the lighthouse. I like the horizon, the sea. I think that all works great. The only thing I wish would be different would be the time of the day or different light. Now in this picture could be captured at 12 o'clock at midday, but it would have to be overcast. So you would get that kind of natural diffusion. When it comes to post-processing on it, what I would do, I would just crop it a little bit tighter. And for those who watch my editing for long now, you know I'm a big fan on 16:9. And what I would do then, I would make it even a little bit smaller. And in fact, maybe end up with something like this. Now, this is very much just an artistic choice, nothing to do with anything really. It's just to kind of give you a hint of what you would do with it. And the reason why I would crop it, let me tell you, let me bring it back to what it was. Now, when you look at the scene, when I look at it first, my thinking is it's all about the sea, the water, and the lighthouse. However, there is lots of other stuff around which is not really that interesting. And this reminds me one of my teachers when I started with the photography. He always say, Jacob, if that specific part of the image doesn't add or give anything to the composition or to the storytelling of the image, it doesn't need to be there. Just crop it away. And this is a great example of it, where I think that by cropping it tighter, focusing more on the main subject here and bringing it closer to that golden point, the intersection of the third lines, really bring much more impact and focus on what's important, which is the lighthouse and the sea. Also, by doing that, in the foreground, you will get just one line of all the different vegetation and foliage, where before there is the distraction of the water and everything. So now we have really clear foreground with all the different bushes and different grass. Then we have our middle ground with the main subject, the lighthouse on our golden point, which works great. And then we have the lovely 1/3 of the image with the sky, which is really lovely. So that's what I would do. Also, just to finish it off, since we're here, I think this picture would look absolutely great in black and white. With a little bit of work around it, you could really create something special. Like, for example, adding like really stronger vignette, adjusting it more towards the center of the image, then maybe adding or removing structure, depending on what you would want to do, and play around with some local adjustment, maybe light, dodge and burn, to almost create a style of image like Ansel Adams would do, and then the picture could really stand out. So that was a lot. I'm sorry for taking that much time, but I hope it was helpful to give you a few tips on what you could do there. Which brings us quickly to the second image, so I don't take too much of your time. This is also really great. I really enjoy the foreground, and which really helps us to open the scene, to give us the foreground, to give us the depth and the overall feel of the image. So that works really nicely. The sun as well is really nice. It's a lovely, lovely scene from the seaside. I think that all works really well. You still get a little bit of glow here around the stone, if you notice. And again, this is often created by a big contrast of the scene between the original image, between the lighter areas and the darker areas. So just be careful when you're adjusting your highlights, shadows, blacks and whites. Just do it as far as it goes and as far as it doesn't create this glow around it. So just keep an eye on that. Otherwise, it's a lovely, lovely picture. Well done. Technically, ISO 200, f8, 1/500 of a second, which is very good. If you would have a tripod with you and ND filter, you could go for a little longer exposure, but in overall, it's a lovely scene. So the setting is good. You get a little bit of blue haze coming through it, which could be easily adjusted later in a post-processing. But again, in overall, I think it's a lovely image. I love the birds and the overall feel. I think it's very atmospheric and I think it works very well. Now we have spent lots of time on the first image, so I will leave this one alone. Still, it's very, very lovely. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. And I hope to see more of your images in the future. Which then brings us to Zdeněk. Zdeněk, all the way from South Africa, coming with 2 images today with this really, really cool panorama, which I assume is the one we were talking about on Sunday. As a one reminder, I think it's just the Windows version, but maybe I'm wrong. But the panorama stitching in Luminar Neo right now has a limit on how big image can you export, and that limit is 15,000 pixels. So eventually when we adjusted it, we find out that you can export it, and this may be the result. And the result is this, Zdeněk. I love the capture. That's a great, great image. I really enjoy that, how you say, it's not really monotone, but that very simple feel of the image. You get that brown shades and brown field with all these plants without leaves on them in a contrast with the blue, which really creates great result. This is often combination of colors that is used in movies and in graphic design and so on. It's the warmth and cold on the top. I think that works really nicely together. And as a panorama, I think it's great. It's a great idea, well put together. Now, from the camera settings, it's a panorama, so I know that it's a bit tricky, but it's ISO 100, f8, 1/200 of a second. Looking around, yeah, keep an eye on your highlights, especially in the clouds. Some of them looks just on a touch of overexposed, but the sharpness is great, the detail is great, the details are great. The texture is nice as well. There's no noise. So in overall, nicely done. When it comes to panorama stitching, well done together as well. Although, especially for this type of scene, you know, the distortion, you will never know how it really looked because I wasn't there. I never seen it. So you have lots of freedom on how you're going to adjust it. The post-processing is really nice as well. And again, I think the combination of the warmth and cold work really nicely together. So all in all, Zdeněk, well done on this one. Not much I would add there. Now coming to the elephant. So no camera details, still Canon 24 to 105 millimeters on lens. And from the camera settings, ISO 100, f6.3 and 1/200 of a second. Now it's a lovely capture. I have to say it's a beautiful animal. I'm always amazed by these captures, you know, coming or being based in Europe. When then you see these kind of animals, I would love to have opportunity one day to photograph them in wild. That would be great. So this is beautiful. Let's jump to the artistic part, the composition. I think it's nice. I think it's a little bit tight. I wish we would have a little bit more space on the sides, not necessarily on the top or on the bottom, but I think it's just a little bit tight, which is, again, no problem at all. I think it's a lovely capture. It's definitely image you could easily print. Oh, the light isn't greatest. You get lots of harsh shadows and sun, but that's how it is, again, for this type of image. And when you see these subjects, you can't really choose. So the only thing you could do, of course, that you could turn it to like a super fine art with turning it to black and white, and again adding like a lots of contrast and heavy vignette, for example. So that's what we could do. We could really bring it down and position it around, then maybe add a little bit of inner light, feather the vignette a little bit more and make it a little bit more round, so something like this. Then you could add a little bit of details with the structure. Or what you could do, to be honest, you could apply the structure just to the animal and leave the rest of it a little bit soft. So more structure, and then with the brush, just brush over the animal. So something like this. Yep, something like this. Then you could add more contrast, or maybe a little bit of dramatic feel with the dramatic tool. So something maybe like this. I think that looks quite cool. Super contrast would be another tool I would use to introduce a little bit more contrast. The good thing with the super contrast is that you can adjust the contrast separately for highlights, midtones and shadows. So for us, I think a little bit for the highlights, and you could end up with something interesting like this. Yes, you could do a little bit of dodge and burn again. Maybe just a little bit on the animal, just to bring more attention to it. Like this, and then darken on the other side, just to darken some parts. Now I'm doing it very quickly, so of course you would have to redo it, but I would try something like that. I think it creates also nice look. When you look at the before and after, it's a little bit more simple. It takes away that strong light and you end up with quite cool picture. Still, the subject is amazing. I love it, great picture. Just maybe next time go for a little bit more space around it. The panorama is beautiful, great idea with the combination of the warm and cool colors. Well done, put together, great effort. So thank you so much for sharing it with us. It's great to see your new images as well coming over, and I can't wait to see more of them next week. And that brings us to Ivana and her two captures of the week. Last week we were looking at that lovely river and also capture with beautiful spider web. So today what do we have? We have this really interesting light coming through the trees with some statue and lots of green colors. And then we have this image right here, which again is a lovely combination of webs with the flower. So Ivana, starting from this image right here, let's have a look at it. So I assume that now looking at your camera, you photographing with Sony 6000 with the lens on this one 35 millimeters. From the camera settings, ISO 160, f2.2, wow, super fast, and 1/250th of a second. So camera settings, perfectly fine, even though I think that maybe the 2.2 in this case is a little bit low, and you can see that, I would say somewhere around here, that's where is your full sharpness. Then you get softness here and softness at the back. So maybe with the f-stop just a little bit higher until at least maybe you start to see the whole foreground in focus or something like that. That's where I would go. What strikes me pretty much right away, because it's really visible, is the chromatic aberration. Let me just zoom in. Is this purple edge on these areas and the areas here. It's normally distracting, but in this picture you can see it a lot because you can really see how that color doesn't belong there. You can have a look at the image and you have a kind of combination of the green and warm sun yellows, and in the middle of it you have a purple really standing out. So that's something I would take care of as well. And otherwise, I think it's really nice. It's very atmospheric. The light is very interesting coming through. I think maybe there is a lot happening on the scene, so it's a little bit over. There's just lots happening there, you know. So you have the tree and another tree, and then you statue and the sun coming through, and the bottom is a little bit cut off. So it's just, I would look maybe for something a little bit simpler. So I'm a big fan of lonely trees, for example. So find a lonely tree with the sun coming through, and I think that would look great as well. But in overall, it's a lovely feel, and I know that you have something about these kind of very mystical and atmospheric shots, and I think it really works for you very well. So definitely keep doing it, keep trying different things. I think sometimes less is more, which in this case means that if you would find maybe lonely tree or try to include a little bit less, I think it would actually help. Similarly with your f-stop, you have a great lens, the f1.8, super fast, can perform really, really well. However, f2.2 for this scene, I think, isn't necessarily the right choice, because I would like a little bit more of the image to be in focus. And finally, when it comes to chromatic aberration, let's quickly have a look at how it can be removed. So I don't know what photo editing software you use. Here in Luminar Neo, there are two ways on how you can remove the chromatic aberration. One is with the use of Develop tool, where you go into the optics and try the auto defringe. So actually that right away helps quite a lot. Let me show you before and after. Another way on how you can do that, by the way, because your image is a mixture of yellow, orange, and green, what you can do, you can go into the HSL panel, jump into saturation, and pretty much take the magenta and purple all the way down, and that will also remove the chromatic aberration completely. There is a way to do that with your blur tool as well, and we have a full tutorial on how to do that on our YouTube channel. So if you have a second, look at it. It's a little bit longer, so we don't have a time for that, but those are some of the ways on how you can remove the chromatic aberration and add back the focus on the rest of the image. So Ivana, that was the first image, and then let's have a look at this one. So what do I like about it? First, the level of details on the flower and web is brilliant. Love the light as well. The white lit, or the bright white from behind, really helps. Again, it helps to bring the details on the web and the flower and all of that. The depth is also great. I really enjoy that. I enjoy the fact that you have the flower and the web, and then it kind of goes slowly, nicely into the softer background. I think that all works really well too. Now, since we're here, we can also talk about the camera settings. This was again your Sony 6000 with the 18 to 50 millimeters on lens. When it comes to camera settings, ISO 100, f3.2, and 1/400 of a second. So again, quite nice fast lens. Camera settings spot on as well. ISO nice and low. f3.2 giving you this graduate softness, which I think works, and 1/400 of a second gives you quite nice exposure. Obviously, it's the kind of moody feel, but more importantly, we get lots of details around, great colors, everything standing out. So that all works very well. I think the framing and the composition is quite nice. It gives us really nice depth. This is all about the light and the level of details on the web. If you would want to, you could crop it a little bit tighter, but actually I would probably leave it. Maybe just add a slight more vignette again and add more light on the flowers just to have them stand out a little bit. What I would do, maybe just add a tiny bit of vibrance just to get the colors stand out a little bit. Now when you look at it, it's kind of before and after. It just adds a little bit of freshness to it, and just by adding the light, you're actually increasing the overall contrast. And I think that all really help to bring it together. So this is an example of what can be done. Otherwise, thank you very much for sending it over. A few different ideas on how you could improve the photography for the future. So I hope it was helpful, and I hope that I can see more of your images maybe already next week. And that will bring us to Tony, our last photographer of the week. Tony, 2 pictures. Unusually for you, we have this cityscape, landscape, riverscape capture, which is really cool. I really like that. I really like the bridge. It's very unusual, but nicely done. So let's talk about that. Camera, Canon 50D with the 18 to 135 millimeters. From the camera settings, ISO 200, f9.5, 1/250th of a second. Unusual f-stop, I have to say, f9.5. So I wonder if you have a manual lens where you can adjust the f-stop manually, but still ISO nice and low. f9.1 should give you nice sharpness all the way through. 1/250th of a second. Yeah, the light is kind of on the lower side. You're starting to get some light coming from here, so that's kind of visible. But all in all, it's technically nicely done. Now, there are a few things which I think we need to point at. One, you have some sensor dust, at least 1 or 2, if I zoom in, and maybe more. So there's also one right here, which we will fix a little bit later. Then your sky has a lot of noise in it, and it almost looks like it's like a color noise as well. So often the first wave of noise looks a little bit like a grain, and then after you start to see also color noise. So that's also something we can take care of later. But more importantly, when I kind of zoom in a little bit, I see everything is a little bit pixelated and just tiny bit soft on it. So that's definitely something you will need to work on and see how you could fix that. I'm not 100% sure what maybe is the problem. For the noise, ISO 200 shouldn't really be that big problem. So I'm quite surprised by the amount of noise. And the sharpness, I don't know if you were on tripod or where you were focusing. It's just really important to try to focus somewhere in the center and somewhere about middle of the depth of the image to get the best sharpness. So the sensor dust, which can be easily fixed, noise in the sky, and a little bit more sharpness. Those are the things I would be looking for. Because when it comes to composition and the artistic part, I think the image looks great. I really like the shape. I think it's nicely done. It has a lovely depth. I think it all works nicely. But some of the technical parts maybe just need to be a little bit worked on. When it comes to removing the sensor dust, all the recent application has a way to do this. For example, in Luminar Neo, you can use the erase tool and click on remove dust spots, which really takes a moment and removes them for you, at least most of them. So if I zoom in here and have a look at the top, you can have a look at the before and after. So I think that works really nicely. Now, when it comes to the noise, we could try to use the noiseless AI and see if that would help. So let's do that. Let's go just for the low adjustments and give it a moment. And for the sharpness, when it's this soft, I don't know, you could try the super sharp AI. You could also try Topaz, what is it? Sharpen Pro or Sharpen AI, something like that. But it's up to you. You need to see what you think is going to help. To be honest, the noiseless AI didn't do great amount of adjustments for the sky. So what we could do, we could try the noise reduction, the traditional one. And what I then do, I really bring it up and see if it helps. If it doesn't help, I don't do it. But in this case, maybe just a little bit of color and a little bit of luminosity, or actually lots of luminosity, can be helpful. And then you basically just mask these adjustments to the sky. So here in Neo, it's done through Mask AI. In Lightroom, it's just you can select the sky specifically and apply these adjustments to them. So once we select the sky, it takes a second and then it will be applied just to the sky. So let me show you the before, oops, with lots of noise, and after without the noise and without the sensor dust. So Tony, that's that. Let's have a look at the second image, which is lovely, 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 lovely. I really like your flowers and plants and this kind of macro captures. You're really good at it. But I am also really happy that you send images like this, because that means that you want to try something else and maybe it's something I can help you with a little bit. But this is great. Details, light, sharpness, everything. The depth, the focal point, the main subject, everything really works. So it's really, really nice. I love the colors. Just kind of going through it. The camera was Canon 50D, 18 to 55 millimeters on the lens. And from the camera settings, ISO 200, f5.6, 1/60th of a second. Camera settings, spot on. Again, great choice of a place, subject, light. Everything works really well, Tony. I love that. Thank you very much for sharing that image with us. So there you have it. Those were the images for this week. I really enjoyed looking at them. I love to see the autumn leaves coming over as well. It's great to see that. Some of lovely seascape. That was great to see as well. Zdeněk's elephant. It's always pleasure to see these African animals and their captures. So folks, thank you very much for sending all of that over. I hope to see more of your images next week. I promise that if nothing comes in, I will be back next week live, talking to you through the chat. But in the meantime, stay safe, keep taking your camera out, and make sure that you post the pictures for next week. By the way, don't forget one more time, if you want to join the free Landscape Photography Summit, where I'm going to be running 2 classes there, all you need to do is to follow the link in the description of this video and come and watch me next week on 11th of November. Folks, have a great afternoon, great evening, and speak to you soon.